Bill had suggested the deal as a partnership. Spencer Publications would pay for a luxury fashion media expansion in exchange for the right to use Forrester branding. It was brave, profitable, dangerous. Eric thought about it for a moment, but Bill had played the long game by bringing up the legacy, family, and future of the Forrester name. Eric finally signed. Eric didn't know, and neither did anyone else, that the contract had a clause that was so hidden that it took a legal microscope to find it. A clause that changed who was responsible. A clause that could kill him. Part 2. Bill Spencer pulls the trigger. Bill Spencer didn't believe in kindness. He believed in using leverage. Bill didn't answer the phone when the expansion didn't do well because of market volatility, not bad management. He called his lawyer. Eric was served with a lawsuit claiming breach of contract, fraud, and misrepresentation within days. Just the accusation was enough to cause a nuclear reaction. Ridge was the first person to burst into Bill's office. "Are you going after my dad?" Ridge yelled, hitting Bill's desk with his hands. "After all he's done?" Bill didn't move. "I'm going after a guy who signed a contract and didn't follow through. That deal was your idea. And he still signed," Bill said in a cold voice. "Welcome to the real world." The lawsuit got a lot of attention. Fashion royalty is in trouble. People who put money in freaked out. Overnight, the stock of Forrester Creations fell sharply. Eric was embarrassed, confused, and shocked, but things were about to get worse. Part 3. The arrest. Eric was drawing in his office when the police came. He barely heard the knock. "Eric Forrester?" one officer asked. "You are under arrest." Handcuffs. Cameras. Lights that flash. The head of a fashion dynasty left his own building like a criminal. Ridge got there just in time to see his dad get pushed into the back of a police car. Ridge whispered, "No." Then louder, "And no." The fee? Willful breach of contract with criminal liability, linked to claims that Bill's legal team said Eric personally approved false projections. It was a stretch of the law, but Bill had the money to do anything. Instead of looking at fashion sketches, Eric spent the night in a jail cell looking at concrete walls. A man who had dressed the world now wore an orange jumpsuit. Part 4. Ridge Forrester let loose. Ridge Forrester had always been angry, but this time it was different. This was a battle. He tore through Forrester Creations like a hurricane, firing lawyers, demanding answers, and promising to get back at them. When he confronted Bill again, security had to stop him. Ridge growled, "You did this to kill us. You wanted to humiliate my father." Bill leaned in and spoke softly. "No. I wanted him to be responsible. Blame him if you're mad." That was when Ridge lost it. Ridge made it his mission from that day on to free his father and expose Bill Spencer. Part 5. Family breakdowns. The Forrester family was torn apart by Eric's arrest. Some people stood together. Some people couldn't handle the stress. Steffi pushed for harsh legal action. Thomas went off the deep end, blaming himself for not seeing the contract clause. Brooke told Ridge to slow down, but he wouldn't listen because he was torn between loyalty and reality. Bill, on the other hand, sat back and watched the chaos he had caused. But he didn't see the backlash coming. People's opinions changed slowly. Commentators wondered why a civil case had turned into a crime so quickly. People started to talk about manipulation. And then something strange happened. Part 6. A man changes in prison. Eric Forrester was not meant to be in prison. But prison didn't break him. It made him stronger. Eric thought about every meeting with Bill, every smile, and every handshake in the quiet of his cell. Then he remembered something all of a sudden. A change to the contract late at night. Bill's lawyers quickly sent in a request for a digital signature. A paper that Eric had never personally signed off on. During a monitored call, Eric sent Ridge a single sentence. "I didn't sign the last version." That sentence set off an explosion. Part 7. The proof. Ridge hired an expert in forensic document analysis. Within weeks, they found problems like timestamps that didn't match up, metadata that had been changed, and digital fingerprints that led directly to Bill's law firm. It was no longer just breaking the law. It was a scam. The case was reopened by the district attorney. Bill's cocky confidence finally broke when his lawyer told him, "If this gets out, you're in trouble." Bill tried to work out a deal. Ridge said no. Ridge said, "You put my father in jail." Now you're going to feel every second of it. Part 8. The Courtroom Reckoning. There were a lot of people in the courtroom. Eric sat with his family. He was thinner but still whole. Bill sat across from him with his jaw clenched and his eyes calculating. The room went quiet when the evidence was shown. The changed contract. The projections that were changed. The fake digital approval. The judge didn't think twice. All charges against Eric Forrester are dropped. Eric was not in jail. But the gavel hadn't finished falling yet. The judge looked at Bill. This court is sending proof of fraud and malicious prosecution to the state. Bill Spencer, a big name in business, was suddenly in handcuffs. Part 9. What happened next? People cheered as Eric left the courthouse. Ridge hugged his dad and shook with emotion. Eric said softly, "I let you down." "No," Ridge said. "You made it through him." Bill got out on bail, but his reputation was ruined. Spencer Publications lost a lot of advertisers. His friends left him. The power he had turned to ash. And what about Ridge? Ridge stood on the balcony of Forrester Creations and looked out over Los Angeles. He knew one thing for sure. Some fights don't just change families. They change what people leave behind. Part 10. A new war starts. Ridge went back to the boardroom with a sharper edge than ever as Eric went back to his sketchbook. The fight with Bill Spencer wasn't over. It had just changed. And in this town, getting back at someone was always in style. Bill Spencer had never been the type of person to give up. He wouldn't believe Ridge Forrester had won, even though his reputation was in tatters and he was in legal trouble. Bill thought this was not justice, it was shame. And being humiliated meant getting back at someone. Bill made phone calls that no one knew about from his mansion with glass walls that looked out over the ocean. Investigators who work for themselves. Connections in politics. People who owed him everything called in old favors. If Ridge thought this war would end in a courtroom, he was very wrong. Bill no longer wanted to destroy Forrester Creations. He wanted to kill Ridge. Eric Forrester got a standing ovation when he came back to Forrester Creations, but something felt off. The man who used to rule with kindness and idealism now had a blank look in his eyes. Prison had taken away all of his hopes. He didn't think that legacy alone could keep his family safe anymore. Eric made a shocking announcement during a private meeting with Ridge. Eric said softly, "I'm stepping back." Effective right away. Ridge stopped moving. "Dad, no. You just got back." "That's exactly why," Eric said. "I put my faith in the wrong person and this company almost died. I won't do that again." Ridge then understood that this was not retirement. Eric gave him the crown and the weight of it. Not everyone thought it was a good idea for Ridge to be in charge. Steffi was very supportive of him because she thought Ridge was the only one who could protect the company now. But Thomas's anger grew stronger. He thought Ridge was so obsessed with Bill that he couldn't see anything else, even his own kids. During a heated argument, Thomas said, "You're becoming him. You're turning into Bill Spencer." Ridge snapped back. "Okay, if that's what it takes to keep this family safe." The words echoed for longer than Ridge thought they would. Bill's revenge came without a sound. An internal Forrester financial projection that showed instability leaked online. Anonymous sources said that Ridge had made up numbers to calm investors. The news went crazy. The Forresters felt like they had been there before. Ridge couldn't believe what he saw on the screen. He said, "That's not possible. I didn't give permission for that release." Eric's chest felt tight. He said carefully, "Ridge, this is exactly how it started for me. It hit hard when I realized. Bill wasn't just going after Ridge. He was making the nightmare happen again." Ridge hardly slept because of pressure from investors, regulators, and the board. He got angrier. His judgment got fuzzy. Brooke begged him to back off before he hurt himself. She said softly, "You're doing this alone. And it's killing you." But Ridge couldn't let go. Not right now. Not after everything his dad had been through. Ridge said, "I won't let Bill win. Never." That once noble obsession was turning into a threat. The last place anyone thought to look for the truth was there. An audit showed that the leaked document had been accessed from within the company. By Thomas. When Thomas was confronted, he broke down. He said that people from Bill's camp had come to him when he was at his lowest point and offered him protection, power, and revenge. Thomas cried and said, I didn't mean for it to go this far. I just wanted you to know how I feel. Always second to you." Rich felt something break that no court could fix. Bill Spencer wasn't the only enemy he had. It was the harm Bill had already done to his family. Eric came back in, but not as CEO, he was a strategist. He talked to Bill in private. Eric said calmly, "You wanted war. You got one. But know this, I made it through prison. You won't make it through what's coming." Eric told Rich something he didn't know. While he was in jail, he had gotten in touch with people Bill had hurt over the years. People who have stories, proof, reason, lawsuits that involve a lot of people, investigations by the federal government, a pattern of sabotage in business. Bill finally looked scared. Rich had to make the hardest choice of his life when Thomas was exposed and Bill was getting closer. You can either press charges against your own son or protect him and risk everything. Eric told him something he never thought he would. "Be a dad first," Eric said. "I wasn't. And it nearly cost us everything." Rich protected Thomas by taking the blame for the leak in public. Bill was furious because he had hoped Rich would kill himself. Instead, Rich did something surprising. He let go. Just a few days later, federal agents arrested Bill Spencer at his home. This time there were no ways to get around it. No hidden clauses. No messing around. Racketeering. Scam. Conspiracy. Bill and Rich locked eyes as Bill was led away. Bill said, "This isn't over." Rich said calmly, "It is for you." Forrester Creations got back on track months later. Eric went back to designing. Rich ruled with calmness instead of anger. Thomas started going to therapy, which was the start of a long road back. The family wasn't perfect, but it was true. And that, after everything, felt like a win. In Los Angeles, though, power never goes away. Just sits there. It was scary how quiet it was after Bill Spencer was arrested. There were no sirens outside Forrester Creations, no emergency board meetings, and no reporters camping out in the lobby for the first time in months. The crisis that had taken over everyone's lives just stopped. But not having chaos didn't bring peace. It made me think and feel bad. Rich sat alone in his office for a long time after everyone else had left, looking at the lights of the city. He had won the war, but he didn't feel like a winner. He felt empty. The price was too high. His father's freedom, his son's trust, and his own moral certainty. He wondered, not for the first time, if power always meant giving something up, or if he had just made the wrong sacrifices. Since his release, Eric Forrester has stayed out of the public eye, preferring to be alone with his sketchbooks instead of going to press conferences. But one night, he told Rich to come over to his house by himself. Eric poured 2 glasses of wine that he hardly drank and said, "I need to tell you something." Rich got ready. Eric went on, "When Bill first gave me that contract, I didn't listen to my gut. I knew something was wrong. But Rich, I was tired. I'm sick of fighting and having to prove myself. I wanted to believe that the next generation could take care of things." Rich made a face. "None of this is your fault, Dad." Eric shook his head. "It is. Being a leader doesn't stop when you're tired. That's when it really matters." Rich was more shocked by the admission than by any accusation. Eric wasn't admitting to being weak. He was admitting to being responsible. At that moment, Rich understood that the legacy he had received was not just success. It was being responsible. Thomas Forrester's fall from grace was quiet but very hard. He left the family home. He didn't come to work anymore. His name was taken off of internal memos. He was on leave in public, but in private he was falling apart. He felt guilty, not only for what he did but also for why he did it. Bill Spencer had finally set off years of anger, insecurity, and unspoken competition with Rich. Thomas stood on the edge of the Malibu cliffs one night, looking down into the dark below. He wasn't trying to do anything. He was just tired. He didn't want to be gone. He wanted the pain to go away. He didn't step forward. Instead, he stepped back and asked for help for the first time in his life. Steffi was very angry when she found out that Rich had taken the blame for Thomas. "You put him first over everything else," she said harshly. "The business. How trustworthy you are. Yourself." Rich didn't say anything. Rich said softly, "He needed a father, not a firing squad." Steffi put her arms across her chest. And what will happen if he does this again? Ridge looked her in the eye. Then I won't help him. She didn't like the answer, but it scared her. She knew how weak the line Ridge had drawn was because she could see it. Bill Spencer had always thought that jail was for weak men. Reality said no. The days were long. Nights are longer. No custom suits. No private spaces. No deals made over a glass of scotch. Only concrete, steel, and men who didn't care who he used to be. Bill planned at first. He went over every move, every betrayal, and every chance he missed. He told himself he would leave. He did it all the time. But things changed when weeks turned into months. Nobody came. No strong friends. No secret help. The world had changed, and it had done so without him. Bill felt small for the first time in his life. Eric went back to the design studio full-time and turned down any executive title. He worked with interns, laughed again, and taught again. The man who built the house finally got to live in it. Ridge changed the structure of the company, not to gain more power but to share it. Secrecy was replaced by openness. Ego was replaced by oversight. At first, the board didn't want to. But profits stabilized, trust came back, and the brand slowly healed. Forrester Creations wasn't able to get through a crisis for the first time in years. It was changing. Ridge and Thomas met for coffee months later. No lawyers. No plans. No one is to blame. Ridge said honestly, I don't trust you yet. But I want to. Thomas nodded. That's more than I deserve. They didn't hug. They didn't make up. But they did talk. And that was a step forward for the Forresters. Bill Spencer watched a business show on a shared TV from his cell. The anchor praised Forrester Creations for its new era of ethical leadership. Bill laughed, but it wasn't funny. He had tried to kill them through the courts and contracts. He had made them into something stronger instead. And that knowledge hurt more than being in jail ever could. Eric realized that legacy wasn't about how high you climbed. It was about what was left after you fell. The Forresters had fallen hard. And they had gotten back up. Together.